The next one is that most lenders will want to see that you've been in both roles for a minimum 12 months, because what they don't want you to do is
When it comes to getting a home loan, every case is uniquely different. And today we're going to talk about unusual incomes and how to get a loan on it. I've got Josh with me, starting off at the top. Josh, talking about maternity leave. So how do you get a home loan if you're currently on maternity leave?
Yeah, a lot of banks will say that they can't help because there's a change in circumstance. A lot of people that go on maternity leave may not even come back to work. And it is hard for the lenders because they're trying to lend responsibly. But there is a way around this. So, providing you can get a return to work letter from your employer, some banks, not all, some banks can consider your return to work income. And how they do this is that they'll look at how much you're failing in terms of the borrowing capacity or the serviceability over the time you're away. So say you're away for 10 months and the bank's calculator is showing a $4,000 deficit, providing you've got the 40,000 saved up, then the bank will consider your return to work income a part of the scenario, allowing you to actually meet their requirements and thus give you the loan. Even though that period you'll actually have no income per se from your employer, that scenario is completely okay.
And I think one thing to keep in mind here, so if you are returning to work, some lenders do require you to be going back one, to the same role. So that's a 100% non-negotiable. And two, within a certain period of time. So you need to be going back to work, usually within a 12-month period. So those things keep in mind. That is something that we deal with a lot of. So if you need assistance, hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au. Now, Josh, let's move on to casually employed roles. How do you get a home loan if you're casually employed? And guys, if you like our videos, hit the subscribe button down below to keep up to date with all things property and finance.
Most lenders will need you to actually be 6 months in role. And it's because as a casual employee, you're not guaranteed any hours. That means that one week you might have 40 hours worth of work, and the next week the employer doesn't have to provide you any hours. So what the bank's trying to do is they're trying to look at a very long period of time, and they'll take the 6 months earnings and they'll annualize that. Now, that's what most lenders will do. There's one or two lenders that can think outside the box. So if you're an IT contractor, or if you're in a profession where things change fairly drastically, consistently, then some banks will actually consider 1 day in role, providing it makes sense. And some of the things they're wanting to know is, do you have a casual contract with guaranteed hours? Do you have history of casual employment whereby it's the nature of the business and the nature of the industry? And if providing there's enough evidence and providing there's enough information where your previous earnings were for the last 12 months, then you could be 1 day in role as a casual employee, and some banks will actually consider that. Very rare, and in most cases, they'll want 6 months.
Definitely. I've had clients that have been in film and television, and the same sort of thing. They go from contract to contract. And if the banks can see that sort of consistency, that history there, they'll take it into account and can take it on board. So keep that in mind. If you're casually employed, there isn't always a hard no if you're less than 6 months in role. Josh, moving on to the next one, recently self-employed. Can you get a home loan if you're recently self-employed?
Definitely. This is a great one. So again, in most cases, lenders will want you to have 2 years tax returns. And this is very hard because in some cases, you might have just created an entity and begun your journey as a self-employed applicant. Now, there's a few ways to get around it. Firstly, there are one or two lenders that can consider 1 year's financials, providing you have 18 months ABN history. And yet there's others that will actually waive it completely. Again, it has to make sense. So as an example, you might be a lawyer or a real estate agent whereby you're on a contracting arrangement prior, you might be on commission only, and you're venturing out to your own. So providing it makes sense, and let's go to the lawyer where you've got the same clients doing the same thing, whereby it's just a different arrangement where you're getting a higher percentage split of the income, then banks will consider that and potentially deem that as acceptable. In most cases, you'll need a 20% deposit though, but everything's case by case and everyone's circumstances are unique. And if you are recently self-employed and the story makes sense as to where you've been and where you're going, then it's worth talking to a great mortgage broker to see whether or not there's a way to get your finances sorted.
And the next one there, Josh, what happens if you're on a probationary period? Can you still get a loan?
Absolutely. So most providers and most lenders will want you to pass your probation period. Probation in Australia is typically 6 months, but it can be as little as 3 months. And most employers, if you're doing a good job, if you ask him, hey, can you pass my probation period, will say yes. So even those few lenders that require a probation to be passed, the first thing you probably want to do is find out with your employer, can you pass me on probation? If the answer is no, then there's limited lenders that will look at two things. Firstly, they'll look at if you have 2 years employment history in the same industry. And secondly, there are lenders that even if you are on probation, it's not a big deal. With or without mortgage insurance, it's completely fine.
As Josh said, it's important to remember each lender has different criteria. Some lenders have criteria. If you're in lender's mortgage insurance, they want to see you in a particular role for 3 to 6 months. Other lenders don't have that. So if you are on probation, there's always ways around it, provided you're working with the right lender. Josh, let's move on to the last one, which is working in multiple jobs. Can you get a loan if you're working on multiple jobs?
The first thing lenders will want to look at is whether or not it's sustainable. And let me explain. So if you're working 2 jobs and you're working 40 hours for job 1 and 40 hours for job 2, most lenders will say, look, this is not sustainable. You might be able to do this for 2, 3, or even 4 months, but over time, you'll get to a position where you're going to have burnout. So most lenders will first look at how many hours are you doing each week combined. If it's over a certain amount, typically that's between 50 and 60 hours, they may consider only adopting a portion of your total hours worked. The next one is that most lenders will want to see that you've been in both roles for a minimum 12 months, because what they don't want you to do is have just taken on this role to get a home loan. They don't want to see you only doing 2 weeks in role. Although, funny enough, there are 1 or 2 lenders that will consider providing it meets their minimum requirements. So if they're both full-time roles, then the bank will apply their normal policy, which is 1 week in role. Again, I think the common theme here is that with there being so many lenders and so many different policies around that, if you find the right mortgage broker, they'll be able to find a solution for you. And no from one lender isn't a no from all lenders, because everyone's circumstances are so unique that it's important to get a second opinion. Don't just accept the bank's opinion of the world, because it's not the true and only way to look at it all.
Well, there's heaps of hope for those out there with unusual income. Are you on casual? Are you on maternity leave? Recently self-employed? This is where we can help. Hit us up at huntergalloway.com.au. We're mortgage brokers. We deal with people Australia-wide. So if you're looking for a great mortgage broker who can assist with unusual income, hit us up, huntergalloway.com.au. Fill in our contact form. We'd love to have a chat, or call us directly on 1300 088 065, and we'll see you next time.